Now, let's tell you about rising food costs, which have been hitting consumers very hard for some time now. And the war in Ukraine has just added fuel to the fire. And just what exactly is making our prices rise? South Africa's fresh produce markets have caught the attention of the Competition Commission and is going to be conducting a market inquiry into features that restrict competitiveness among several issues. Well, for more on this, to shed more light for us, I'm joined this hour now by Sipho Ngwema from the Competition Commission of South Africa. Sipho, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. I do understand from your press statement that was issued about this, that this is a general investigation. It's a public market inquiry. But I still do need to start here. What led the Competition Commission to do this inquiry at this time?
Thank you, Braden. Yes, indeed, it's a market inquiry, which we normally conduct when we have concerns with regards to features that we think may lessen, prevent, or even distort competition in a particular sector. So you would then do that general investigation then, which would lead to certain findings and certain recommendations. And what led to this, first of all, this is our priority area as a Competition Commission, because it's a very important area in terms of our lives as South Africans. Agriculture is very critical. So particularly when we have a huge population of people who are unemployed and very many of them poor. So you need to make sure that you are on top of it with regards to prices and anything that is taking place in that market. And two, you know that there's been a general trend in terms of high inflation with regards to essential foods, particularly that may have to do with agriculture. We then also, late last year, produced a concentration report, which basically gave us some indications that there may be some levels of concentration in this market. We need to understand those levels deeply, and we need to understand what are the effects of that with regards to the players in this particular market. And lastly, there have been some complaints about certain activities in this market. So we need to dive deeper in order for us to understand what has to be done, are the things that to worry about. If there are those things, how can they be resolved?
Yeah, so this is the fresh produce market. It's not a retail market inquiry.
Yes, indeed, Braden. About 2-3 years ago, we did a retail market inquiry, which you would know that led to a number of MOUs, particularly with your big tenants in these various markets, where they then undertook to allow competition into those shopping centers. But also there are a number of other developments in that regard where we spoke to local government regulations and the need to change certain bylaws, the need to deal with certain activities around spaza shops and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So
that was done 2 years ago. So this inquiry is different. It's fresh produce market inquiry. You will look at aspects like, for example, the sale of fresh produce by the farmer to the end customer. You're going to be doing that.
Yes, indeed, Braden. We are looking, basically, we have 4 themes. We are looking at the efficiency of the value chain, to look at the things that we have mentioned now. How does the end product end up with the consumer? What are the issues that we need to look at in terms of that value chain? What are the levels of concentration in that regard, and what impacts the prices? But secondly, we also want to look at the market dynamics, the inputs into the final product, fertilizers, everything that you need, and how do those things determine the price. But also we want to know that the small growers, but not previously disadvantaged growers, how are they participating in the market? Are they in the market? Are they allowed to grow? Are they allowed to compete? What are the dynamics that we can find there? How can we assist to make sure that those small players, black and white, can be able to be empowered to participate meaningfully in the market? And lastly, we also want to look at barriers to entry generally into this, because all those things should affect the price that you and I pay at the till, and we want to understand whether those prices are fair, whether those prices are reasonable with regards to all these aspects that we want to investigate.
So the idea then is that you're going to invite anybody already you said you've received some complaints, but as part of this inquiry, are you going to be inviting the farm growers themselves, the small-scale farmers, the historically disadvantaged producers, to make submissions? How is it going to work? How is this inquiry going to be rolled out?
Yes, indeed, but we want to go to all the stakeholders in this particular market who may have any evidence, who may have any information and comments that would assist us to reach some better understanding from a competition point of view of all the relevant dynamics in this particular value chain in the sector. So we are going to go to the communities. We are going to roll out a communication plan. We are going to do activations to make sure that the relevant stakeholders are able to make their inputs in these inquiries. But furthermore, we want people to comment now on the terms of reference that we have released, so that those terms of reference can be encompassing and be able to assist us to get the information that we're looking for. So anyone who wants to get the terms of reference or wants to comment on the terms of reference, our email address is ccsa@comcom.co.za, ccsa@comcom.co.za. So those are the comments with regards to the terms of reference, but we'll be interacting with stakeholders and communities to make sure that they do attend these public hearings, they do make their contents, so that we can have a better understanding of this particular sector.
Can you assure South Africans that this will not be an urban exercise? I'm asking this because a city like Joburg has got a big fresh produce market there on Heidelberg Road. I've been there myself a couple of times. I know that Tshwane, the capital city, also has a big fresh produce market. I would imagine you'd find similar in Durban, in Bloemfontein, in Cape Town. Are you going to extend this even to so-called rural towns, because they also have fresh produce markets?
We want to make sure that we reach South Africans in each and every corner of this country, because as you correctly say, the rural people, particularly the poor, they are in all the corners, and therefore those are the people we would want to reach, we would want their comment, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the final product that is produced and sold at these markets is able to be afforded by the relevant population. As I said to you, we have a huge population of unemployed people, people who are poor, and therefore the prices that they are paying for these essential products must be reasonable and fair. And so part of this investigation, we need to get their comments, we need to get their input. But I must also say that we did launch investigations, which are not necessarily this one, but investigations into the Cape Town, Johannesburg, and Tshwane fresh produce market with regard to certain activities there that we suspected are taking place, and that investigation is going. But this one also wants to dive deeper. What kind? Understand.
Yeah, sorry, what kind of activities are going on in those three markets you've mentioned, in Joburg and Pretoria and Cape Town?
You'd remember we had come here and to explain that we see some activities where there seems to be foreclosure. There seems to be some dominance that was taking place, and that dominance was being, we're suspecting that people were abusing their dominance in this market and trying to keep away small growers, and particularly the previously at disadvantage. So there were certain dynamics that we are investigating there, because it seems as though there are certain artificial barriers that have been imposed on those growers. So that is continuing.
Yeah, this new inquiry, sorry Sipho to come in, just running out of time now. This new inquiry for the fresh produce market you are telling us about today does not replace that investigation into the Joburg, Pretoria and Cape Town fresh produce market in terms of that alleged dominance.
Not at all. That investigation is continuing. It's specific to certain activities where we received information in terms of what is happening or is alleged to have happening there. But this one wants to understand the entire value chain, so that when we complain about ginger, when we complain about any other food item, we're able to understand why are we complaining about that particular price, because we would have done an investigation into all the levels of concentration and everything that then inputs into the price outcome of a particular item or food item that is in this particular sector.
Okay, finally, your terms of reference are out for public comment. You've said deadline. What's the deadline by when you want the public to have contributed to that so you can finalize them and get the inquiry going?
Thank you, Praten. We want people to make comments by the 22nd of April this year. 22nd of April this year. If I repeat again, can send those comments to ccsa@compcom.co.za, ccsa@compcom.co.za. If people can bring their comments on or before the 22nd of April so that we can then consider them, and then we'll come back to outline the entire process and the length of the investigation.
Yeah, and we'll also talk to you in the near future about the other investigation around those alleged dominance activities in Cape Town, Joburg and Pretoria produce markets, because it's a separate investigation. We'll touch base with you in the near future to say how is that going. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That's Sipho Ngwema, Head of Communication from the Competition Commission of South Africa.